I think I watched my neighbor die last night. Trigger warning: blood, death, alcoholism. We heard a loud thunk in the hallway of our complex. We didn't immediately investigate because there are loud young people who make a lot of noise going up and down the stairs. It was probably about 3 to 4 minutes later, no longer, we confirmed, that my husband went to walk the dog. He came back inside and said he thought one of our neighbors had fallen. I went with him to check, and we found our elderly neighbor at the foot of the stairs with a huge, thick puddle of blood around his head, about 2 by 2 feet. He had fallen and hit the back of his head on the concrete. His eyes were barely open, and he was in what looked like agonal breathing. The look of terror on my poor, sweet husband's face was devastating. Our first reaction was to quickly turn away and retreat. It was just awful. My immediate thought was, oh God, I don't want this trauma. But then I realized it was already too late. I had already seen it. So I held his hand tightly and calmly told him, loudly, that help was coming. There was so much blood around his ears, and he wasn't really conscious or responsive, but I needed to do my best to let him know he wasn't alone. Near the end, he faintly grabbed my hand back. It was terrible because I couldn't help him. I felt his head needed to stay still, so I didn't want to turn him or put him in the recovery position like the dispatcher mentioned. There was just so much blood. I didn't want to touch his head or apply pressure. He reeked of alcohol and apparently has had a drinking problem for a while. Other neighbors came out as EMS arrived, and we stopped them so they wouldn't have to see him. Unfortunately, they started loudly talking about his personal business, how they hear him stumbling around all the time and how heavily he drinks. One of the men was laughing about it while my husband and I were clearly shaken. We told them the blood was massive and that he was not doing well. Not to mention they also reeked of alcohol. Even the EMS workers said, oh shit, when they turned the corner. From their comments, I could tell it wasn't looking good. I heard one say something like they felt the back of his head and that it wasn't hair, or they were referring to what they were cleaning up. He is 73 and doesn't have children, just a brother. I honestly will be amazed if he survived this, and if he did, I'm certain he would have major brain damage. It was a bad fall with a thick layer of blood. I know head wounds bleed a lot, but it was coming from his ears and was definitely internal, not just his scalp. Yes, I played some Tetris and will keep playing it. I will be okay. I am more worried about my husband. The pain and terror on his face broke me. He said it hurt his heart to see that man like that. My husband and I are different in emergencies. When our house was struck by lightning and caught fire, he panicked and shut down a bit, while I jumped into action and grabbed our pets, documents, medicine, and electronics. I joke that it's my ADHD superpower. I just wish we had peeked out the door sooner, but we weren't trying to be nosy if it was just the loud young people coming home for the night. Sometimes homeless people pass through as well. Our first thought was that it might have been a drunk or high homeless person, as we've seen someone sit in that exact spot before. But the blood was awful. It wasn't something we expected to see when we walked up and saw his feet. I'm so sad for this man. That's not a good way to go, and it's heartbreaking that his drinking led to this. Apparently, he had a similar fall years ago that seriously injured his arm, under the same circumstances. I can only hope the alcohol kept him from feeling much pain and that the injury itself quickly incapacitated him. We only heard the thud and not a single sound afterward, so I think he was incapacitated very quickly. I needed to share this somewhere. I don't want to burden my loved ones with the full details of what was truly a horror story.